joining us. APADC, if you're not familiar with our organization, we're a nonprofit trade organization for photographers. They do a ton of work behind the scenes for our community. So if you're not a member, please consider joining up. We've got some upcoming events I want to talk about. An in-person event on Thursday, the 21st this month, a happy hour at Calico in DC. And then we have on the 26th, an evening event on Zoom. That's a conversation with Hollis Bennett. He's a prolific photographer and director. He'll be talking about all the various new revenue streams that he's come up with, with his photography business, and also offering production assistance. Should be really interesting. So hope you all can join us for that. That's free for APA members. Then we have our next 30 minutes with Tamara Darden. She's a photographer, director, and producer, and she also does the Photo CEO Substack. She should be a fantastic speaker. So that's October 3rd. And then we have our October happy hour. That's at the Dewdrop Inn on October 17th. And we'll return back to our coffee breaks. That'll be the photo book meetup. That's going to be October 28th down at the Kogod Courtyard in the National Portrait Gallery. So hope you can join us for any or all of those events. Want to also remind people, for people who are members and people who are thinking of becoming members, don't forget to use all of your APA discounts. Always take a look at APA, see if you can get a discount on something with your membership before you go ahead and purchase. And if you are interested in becoming an APA member, you're not yet, you can use this discount code for $20 off any of our membership levels. It's DC1 for 20. And Sam Levitan, who's here also in the meeting, he's our membership chair. So you can feel free to reach out to Sam with any questions. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a moment. And I should probably introduce myself. I'm Mike Morgan. I'm the chair of APADC, and we're also joined by Katie Dance, who's our director. Okay, well, I would like to introduce Kirth. So Kirth's an award-winning photographer, a FujiFilm X Photographer whose work illustrates the synchrony of life and spans several genres of photography, including commercial, editorial, street, and fine art photography. His photographs have been featured in many publications, including New York Times, Washington Post. Commercial clients include Uber, Deloitte, and the Oprah Winfrey Network. And I'm going to go ahead and let Kirth take it over from here. Welcome, Kirth.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for 30 minutes. I don't really have a format for today. So once I figure out how to play this thing, I don't really have a format for today. I just wanted to kind of come on and again, meet a few members of the community and share a bit about whatever I felt like. I threw this thing together about 4 hours ago. And when Mike reached out, I said, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. So let's call it Let It Happen, letting it happen and see what happens. My name is Kirth. I am let's start with what I'm not, right? I know this is APA, but one of the things that I wanted to discuss today around letting it happen was, I've been like doom scrolling a lot lately. It's that season. And every like 5 or so posts, you see like, here are the 5 things you could do right away to be insert thing that people think that they're not. So part of what I want to do is I want to offer like, in a very casual way, like 5 things that kind of anchor me in my practice as a photographer, right? If I can scroll to the next slide, though, 1 second. All right, can you see the full thing, or is my Zoom blocking it? Good. All right. So start with what you're not, right? Like I said, I've played in several genres of photography, and I'm very careful not to get attached to any of them. You know, I've won awards for my wedding work, for my street work, and you know, I get the sense that from my experience that because we're artists in this commercialized space, there's a need, there's a perceived need to kind of like define, like, this is what I shoot, and I only shoot this. Um, Whether it's market forces or, you know, that's how you feel. I always say start with what you're not. I'm not an American photographer. I know this is APA, but I'm not an American photographer. And I think that's one of the things that, no, that is the thing that makes my work what it is, because it's a very unique point of view in an American market telling American stories, right? I am Caribbean, culturally, South American, geographically. And right now I split my time between DC and Jamaica because a lot of how I see the world was informed by how I saw the world as a child growing up. And for me, it's really important to reconnect to that, right? Because I realized, like, man, this is it. No one else sees the world the way I do. And it allows me to tell stories from a very unique perspective. So yeah, I think top 5 things. Number one, start with what you're not, you know? And I almost guarantee that as you go through the things that, you know, you're going through the things like, oh, I'm not a fashion photographer. I'm not an editorial photographer. You're constantly going to evolve as a result of the practice of just starting with what you're not. Talk to strangers and mean it. One of the things that I really am grateful for is just space to work, you know? I have a pretty, I think, robust street photography practice. This image was taken in Morocco, and iPhone image. But, you know, having a camera gives me this almost like a license to talk to strangers. And, you know, as I've looked at and examined and experienced what it means to live here at times, like, we just don't, everyone just remains a stranger. You know, I've had several instances where, you know, I don't know, it's like, man, like, I see you. Do you see me? It's okay, but like, it's weird. So talk to strangers and mean it, right? Actually, you know, when I say mean it, it's not necessarily a casual like, hi, how are you? It's like, if I'm gonna take the time to sit and talk with you and stop and talk with you, like, I mean it. You know, it's not just to be nice. um, Fuck around, play around, play. The New York Times called me a few weekends ago, and this is back in maybe April, wasn't a few weekends ago. And I just so happened to be in New York. The assignment was in New York, and I went to go photograph this guy. And I don't know, his apartment. The story was around people who had these eclectic and interesting living spaces, and I just played like we played hide and seek, or, you know, we played and we made photographs as a result of it, simply as a way to kind of, you know, pull the curtain back a little further for what this interaction could be. um and you know, a lot of times I go into shoots, like, I may do a lot of mental prep, but then I just toss it all out and I just start with play. I fuck around, and more times than not, I find out, and it's good learning. Make your own music, right? um you know, I've done a few workshops, and I've done a few of, I think, the traditional educational things around photography. And while I think all those things have served me, my own music is the best music. I I admire everyone's work. I just don't care about it that much, right? I admire what goes into it. I admire everyone's perspective. I think it's beautiful. But deep down, I think we can live in a world where we can all be different and still be successful, right? I think that's what makes this thing magical. So yeah, make your own music. Uh, and finally let it happen, right? A few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, a friend invited me to make photographs for a campaign she was running um, for an organization she was started for some advocacy work to get Justice Brown nominated to Supreme Court. And I made this image. I call it the Supreme Future, where it's the Supreme Court like you've never seen it before until now, right? Because one of the things I believe is that in order for things to become real, we have to first like make them, and we have to see, like someone has to see it. Someone has to go over the mountain, see it, or create it and say, you know what, like this is possible. So this was one of those moments for me where, again, casual invitation from an acquaintance who is a creative as well, but also works in advocacy space here in DC. And she said, hey, I want to make some images. I want to get 100 Black girls of color and create these portraits. It was right around the time that RGB passed away as well. That kind of let's call it shift people's perception of what's possible for the highest court in the land. So I made this image, and a few months later, she sent me a text message that she was gonna have a chance to meet Justice Brown, and she wanted me to create like a photo book, a photo essay, right? So I just made some prints. And for me, it was one of those moments where, I've never met Justice Brown, but we've met through my work. And it wasn't something that was orchestrated. It wasn't like in some brand marketing plan. It wasn't in some like scheme I devised. I simply let it happen, right? I made the photograph, did my best on the assignment, and I walked away. And this is one of the moments for me that has really been inspiring and empowering, because I now understand the power of the images I make, right? I now understand the like how my work is being received and the impact it can have, So I get to say, or maybe not, I probably won't say it a lot, but I have an image in the Supreme Court, like as a gift. So, it's not quite 30 minutes, but I think Mike asked me how long I've been making photographs, and I may have said 2008. But I think at that point I just had a camera and I was making money. Now I have a really good sense of what it is I'm doing with my craft and the impact of it. We're visual people, and we have sayings like seeing is believing, and I'm like, okay, well, what I want people to believe, I get to make it. Thank you. And again, this is more about connecting with community. So the presentation was super short. I didn't want to show a bunch of work or talk about who I've worked for. I just want to open it up for conversation at this point. Questions, comments, anything.
Great, thank you, Kirth. Let's see. Do we want to maybe we want to stop sharing the screen? We can go back to the group view.
Are we there?
Everybody here? Yeah. Let's see here. We can do that. Great. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about since you said that obviously you do a lot of street photography. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you approach strangers and how you get them to loosen up, and what those interactions are like for you?
That's a really good question, and it varies from individual to individual, situation to situation, right? But at a fundamental level, I think about like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then I actually see myself with that thing happening, and I'm like, I'll be okay. And then I just go for it, right? And a lot of times when I approach people, sometimes it's not well received. Sometimes I just catch people at the wrong time. I'm in the wrong vibe. But most of the time it's well received, and it's a highlight of my day and hopefully theirs. And I just approach them like this. I look them, I may pay a compliment, like an honest compliment. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe I give a critique, right? But it's I approach them like this. I myself, I think I do pretty good at reading the room, and I trust it. And that allows me to, man. And I know that I'm gonna make a good photograph of this person. So I know that in the end of the interaction for them is gonna go, way beyond their expectations, right? I'm like, let me make your portrait. They're like, I don't look good. I'm like, wait, you don't see what I see. Like, give me a second, And then it's this moment where I feel like I bring a little bit of joy by practicing the thing that brings me joy.
Well, and then, thinking a little bit more about these personal connections, can you tell us a little bit about some of the personal projects that you've been doing? I know you've been working in Jamaica, where you also have a home, right?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you tell us a little more about that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, as my artistry developed more and I began to just kind of settle into my practice, I made a very, very conscious decision not to do the things that I needed to do to not be known as an American photographer. And here's why. My culture is like super important, right? My way of seeing the world is super important. And, I find oftentimes because of maybe let's call it the sheer magnitude of the market here in America, we kind of have to peel back the layers to get to who people are. Like oftentimes we have these moments like, did you know so and so was this? Did you know so and so was from here? And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want any guesswork. I'm people from the Caribbean. I'm a sun person. I see the world that way. I'm a community person. I grew up in community, which is for me somewhat different than living here. So a lot of the personal projects one of the big personal projects that I've been doing is, as I've traversed the different islands and spaces, I've been photographing similarities and differences, right? And specifically in Jamaica, I've been working on a project with the Treasure Beach Women's Group, which is, a benevolent society of women in this village that I now call home, called Treasure Beach. It's on the south coast of Jamaica. And, these women have been kind enough to and the whole community has been welcoming to my presence. And, I'm just observing and learning about different ways of being, right? I enjoy photographing older people and spending time with older people because for me, it's a life hack. I get to understand, eventually I've realized that, man, a lot of the old people are saying the same thing. They're just saying like, just give it up and live your life. So I use my personal projects as a way to inspire personal growth and just expansion. It's like, if I'm curious about something or, the way people live or an individual, I dive in. I'm echoing now, but I'm better. That's better. Good question, Mike. Thank you. You're muted, Mike.
Sorry. I love what you're saying about talking to older generations as a form of a life hack. I think that's a really a wonderful way to describe it. What you can get out of that. Would you mind sharing your screen and showing us some images from the project and maybe talking a little bit about about some of those stories?
You know, I can. Let me see if I can find a hold on. I think I have something. There we go. All right. Where are we? All right, I'll share a couple images and I'll try to keep the stories brief, you know. So ever since I came to the US in, I think, 97, it was pretty clear that this wasn't home for me, right? This would be a place that I live, but I was like, something's off. I think more and more we're seeing all the offness, but yeah, I was like, this is off. So I was like, you know, I'm gonna get back to the Caribbean some way. And I actually picked up a camera because my formal education is in computer science and like a technical discipline, right? So super logic, super binary, this or that. And I pick up the camera and say, you know what? If I get really good at this thing, I could move back. I could live anywhere. Like forget the Caribbean, but like the world is open, you know? So I picked up the camera and I started making photographs and, you know, teaching myself, attending workshops, da 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 da. And somehow I kept going back to Jamaica, and then I went to this village in the South Coast, and I fell in love. I was like, man, this is a different way of living, you know. This is a way of living that is, I like to say, lovingly familiar, right? Someone asked me to describe what home was, because it's still, for me, it's not necessarily tied to place. It's like what feels lovingly familiar. That's home. And this place had the feeling, and it wasn't just the place, it was the people. So as I spent more time there, you know, I met more of the women, and these are just a few of the characters in the story that, you know, I've been following. But their goal was to do a better job of storytelling so that they can inspire younger women in the community to, you know, serve more and be more engaged. So the name Tapestry comes from, you know, that's their ideating, that's their name, and I just took it on when I started doing portraits. But you know, here are a very diverse group of women from everywhere that you can imagine. Europe, the United States, Jamaica, different places, you know. And they formed this tapestry that has essentially held this community, just held the community. I wouldn't say in place because it's constantly changing. So, you know, one of the characters is a woman I met named Celeste. She was born in Brooklyn, and you know, one thing led to another, and she has this incredible story of how she made it to this village in Treasure Beach. And then another woman that I photographed in this project, her name is Miss Ruby. Miss Ruby passed away, I think, last December. But Miss Ruby is one of the sweetest souls you ever meet, you know. It's her grandson. But as she was sharing her story with me while I was making these portraits, you know, it's beautiful to kind of have, it's almost like time traveling, right? You know, we're on this road of life and I get to connect with someone from the future, right? Someone who's like lived a lot of life, and I get to ask questions and I get to listen. I get to hear, you know, what's the most important thing? I get to ask questions like that and then kind of devise my own interpretation, right? Help it to kind of shape my life. Another woman that I encountered in Treasure Beach when I first got there, Cecilia. Cecilia is kind of at the cusp with like next generation, right? So Cecilia is younger. She spent a lot of she's from Treasure Beach. She's from the community. And, you know, she is hyper involved. She's the bridge between, you know, kind of this older generation of women and the younger people coming up. So Cecilia is very much into, you know, she runs a summer camp for the youth. So, you know, for me, it was understanding that, yeah, the what it takes to truly build community is really like an intergenerational connection, right? Like we need each other on every level, because I hang with a lot of old people. A lot of my friends are old. Like I go to 60th birthday parties all the time, and it's freaking amazing, you know, because they're done early and they got good food. But for me, it's I get to help them understand the world that I live in, and they get to help me understand the world that they've experienced, right? And it may be simple, like explaining to them how to do airdrop, right? But I think there's so much richness that happens in those exchanges, and I'm just grateful I get to spend time with, you know, I get to have a community that is essentially, it spans life, right? Young people, like old people, newborn people, almost dead people, like grateful.
I would just say, can you go back to a couple of pictures ago, the Sistina when she's on the beach?
Yep.
I love the next one, the full picture. What I love about this is you're talking about transitions as you describe this, and she's in the transition between, you know, the ocean and the beach. But it was also drawn to her lower legs, where it's like literally she's got, it's also the transition where like the water's transitioning, you know, the wet, you know, her on her legs is like transitioning to dry, and it's like that, to me, this is like she's right in the middle of all that transition in multiple ways. I think it's lovely.
And good pickup, right? Because a huge part of the way I make photographs is like everything is intentional, you know. If you've ever shot with me, you know, I'm not clicking it until I get everything in the frame that I want, or everything that I don't want is out the frame, you know? Because you never know which pixel is really going to help the story to kind of go like, you know, truly connect. So thank you.
Great observation. So Kirth, I know, you know, we titled this sort of letting it happen, right? But when you're embarking on a project like this, like ultimately, what are your goals? Do you hope to, you know, eventually make prints of this and show it in a gallery? Do you hope to capture commercial work with some of it?
You know,
is it just in strictly personal for your own growth?
it's all all of the above, kind of. You know, the main driver for me is service, right? And essentially, I look at it like I'm lending my energy and my talent to something that these women are doing that is incredibly beneficial to a community that I don't even have access to, right? So the main thread for me is service, right? Even when I make portraits of people, it's with a very clear understanding that I'm not just providing a service, like I'm being of service, right? I'm allowing someone access to my gifts so that they can create more space to share theirs. So it's it's service, and then the rest I simply let happen, right? This project, and that's a crazy way to live, but I love it, and I'm constantly surprised by the opportunities that come my way simply by orienting towards service. This project, I have some really good friends who are filmmakers in Montana. We worked on a project here in DC. I did like stills, I did portraits for, you know, the main character for the short doc. And we had a call a few years ago, and I was like, you know what, man, like I just need to do more service-based work. Not necessarily volunteering, but if I, you know, what I found is I found that sweet spot between the commercial space, right? Whatever that is, and the space in me that's simply oriented towards service. So anyway, so I met my friends, and essentially a few months ago, I always say a few months ago, it's like early last year, they came down and they filmed a documentary, and we recorded some interviews, and actually did some really cool things. Like the project is just taking on a life of its own, but the goal is still service. Like ultimately, I envision, the documentary, a lot of the portraits, being able to generate some level of, I don't even want to say revenue, right? It may be, someone might see it and take an interest in the women's group and their mission and lend their energy to it. So that's it. It's service, and then I let the rest happen.
Yeah.
And somehow
perhaps it's generating opportunity. It's either generating for you or for the people in the photos. So yeah.
And I think, it gives me range. It allows me to show my range, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's I would have to really pull the needle out the haystack to get an assignment like this that paid. Right? I'm sure there are ways and avenues, but for me, if I just you know what, this is something I'm interested in. I'm also I end up working with a lot of women. I grew up in a household of women. So, a lot of these women reminded me of the women I grew up with, right? And the women in my community. So it's again, it's lovingly familiar.
What I like about what you were just saying is you talk about being of service to people. And I love that idea, but you're also you're providing riches, but in the full sense of the word, not financial riches, but sort of a rich life. And helping others in whatever that might be, whatever form that takes. You're offering up riches.
Yeah, because I got enough. Mm-hmm. And for a long time I photographed a lot of weddings. I still do weddings. Some I may do maybe 3 to 5 a year. And I do weddings under a brand called Beloved Agency. But the thing that draws me to weddings is or has kept me interested in that practice is, I tell couples, I'm like, listen, I'm not making these photographs for you. Like, you're going to enjoy them this much, but the people who come after you are going to enjoy them this much, and then this much, and then this much. So it's constantly going to appreciate in terms of heart value, right? And for me, that's just trippy, right? Like a photograph I make 20 years from now is going to inform someone about how to live their life or things to consider as they live their life, right? They get to see where they came from. And I think that's important.
That's a really good way to look at it. You're increasing in value.
Yeah, increasing in value.
Absolutely. But I love that. I do have one more question that I have, but switching definitely more towards the commerce side of things. I'm curious about, I'd love to hear about how you created your relationship with Fuji and how that came about. They approached you. What kind of connections happened to make that happen for you, and what has it done for you? What has it meant for your career?
Great question. The Fuji thing, I let it happen. I talked to strangers. But before all that, I had been shooting with FujiFilm for quite some time, right? And this is when I was heavy into weddings. And one of my really good friends, Jide Alakija, who's a Nikon ambassador, just an amazing storyteller. We both had this interest in street photography. So it was about getting a tool that I could take with me, right? Everywhere. And that's where the X100 series camera came in. And I just started making photographs with their cameras. At that point, I didn't like, it didn't matter if I was an ambassador. I just was doing what I was doing, right? And I was at a trade show, I think WPPI, And, you know, as I was doing this street photography thing, I would invite my wedding friends. I'd be like, yo, like, let us go to, I don't know, let's go to Cuba, right? Let's go to Cuba and hang out and learn some things. And give me 1 second, let me load this up. Let's go to Cuba. Let's just go to Cuba and make photographs and hang out. And yeah, let's just go play. And a lot of them ended up getting X100s and XT photographs, XT4, 3, 2, 1, whatever, because it was a really good tool to just quickly, you know, EVFs were new, you know, really good for street photography. And I was at this trade show and I was at the Fuji booth, and my friend Linda Wells, who is an amazing photographer in the Bahamas, I was chatting with the Fuji rep, and I think she said something like, you know how many people Kirth has made buy these X100 cameras to like practice, and how much better it's gotten us. And I formed a relationship with Fuji then, just casual, right? And at that point, I was helping Joe Newman, who was on the call with Focus on the Story, which is the photo festival we used to run here in DC. And Fuji was, you know, through that relationship, they were generous enough to offer sponsorship. And then, you know, as everything was happening with, I don't remember the year, but when everyone kind of woke up and was like, oh, there's some inequities in the society, and everyone was kind of looking for camera ambassadors. It was like this rush to get like, you know, fucking DEI credit, whatever. Fuji had a call. They didn't do anything. They weren't super reactive. But they had a call with a lot of people in the FujiFilm community. And you know, they were like, you know, we realized that we're kind of the last camera. We haven't said anything. We haven't done anything. By this time, everyone had released like their new batch of ambassadors. They were like, listen, we want to be thoughtful about this, you know? And I think I'm telling the story correctly, but I remember the initial idea was to have, well, how do you make this Fuji X Photographer, you know, community more vibrant, right? How do we truly make it a reflection of the world that we live in? And I remember that there was an idea like, well, we could have current Fuji photographers nominate new X photographers. And I was like, that don't make no fucking sense. Because they don't know a lot of, like, they're just in their silo. This is why the thing is the way it is. And ultimately Fuji said, you know what, we're just going to open this up. It's an application process, because a lot of these relationships are pretty much black box. You don't know how people get to the thing that they like, right? So they opened it up and I applied. And the best thing about it is the community again, right? I'm not a gearhead. Man, my cameras are very aged sometimes. I don't shoot the latest and greatest, because once I learn an instrument, I learn it and I know it, and it becomes an extension of me. So I'm not always on the chase to get the latest thing. I don't really know specs that well. But what I do know is I know that the people at Fujifilm and our community of X photographers, they're some of the most incredible human beings. Like, I've had the pleasure of meeting. And that's the best part of it, you know, like the people. Yeah, the GFX 100 S2 is an amazing camera. And I think everyone should get one. But the people and the community is the thing that I think I benefited the most from.
I think I met you I just went back and checked my emails around 2018.
Yep.
And I think it was from Focus on the Story. And I think I bought a Fuji because of you. Because I looked
at,
like,
I remember it.
All that, the work, it's the paradise, the very colorful work. And I thought, this is everything I'm not, but I admired it so much that I was like, I have to admit, I was like, what camera does he use?
Yeah, and you know, but the thing is that there is a relationship between the instrument and the work. I love the color fidelity of Fuji. Like, I just love it. I like, sometimes I'm shooting tethered and I just like, oh, I just want to like lick my screen, like, good color. So yeah, that's it. The people, the community, right? And listen, I think as a camera company that is Japanese, I also resonate with their whole notion of Kaizen, just constant improvement, right? I'm drawn to spaces that have like fundamental values, right? Not necessarily like dogma or being static, but how can I not find affinity in a camera company? They're like, listen, constant improvement. That's what we do. That's it. So hence me and Fuji. We love each other.
Excellent. Well, the ideal ambassador for Fuji. So that's wonderful. Well, Kirth, I want to thank you. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Otherwise, I think we'll go ahead and then bring this to a close. So Kirth, thank you very much for sharing.
My pleasure. My
Yeah.
pleasure. And you know, I want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank Lewis Tinsley for, you know, just being Lewis. I wasn't a member at APA until he got on board. He's like, you know, man, you should like join, pull up. Amazing guy. Matthew, you know, I've met over the years, always an amazing guy. FujiFilm, and everyone who took time, like, you know, maybe this is your lunch break, maybe not, but thank you for coming out. Thank you.
Yeah. It's but another excellent community like you were talking about. That's what APA hopes to provide. So
yeah, you're doing it.
Okay, good. We are glad to have you part of it. So, all right. Well,
All right.
thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you all next time, I hope. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye.